You wake to the sound of the sea. Not the gentle lapping of waves on a summer shore, but the deep, restless roar of the English Channel in October, the kind of sound that makes men pray, the kind that drowns out everything else, the crackling of campfires, the murmur of 10,000 voices, the nervous laughter of soldiers who know that tomorrow they might die. It's the night before the Battle of Hastings, October 13th, 1066. You're standing on English soil, though it doesn't feel like it yet. The beach at Pevensey stretches behind you, littered with the remains of the crossing, broken oars, waterlogged supplies, men still vomiting seawater onto the sand. Ahead, the rolling hills of Sussex disappear into darkness. Somewhere out there beyond the mist and the night, Harold Godwinson waits with his army. And here, in the centre of it all, stands William, Duke of Normandy, claimant to the English throne. Some call him William the Bastard, a name that's followed him since birth, whispered in Norman halls, spat by enemies, carried like a scar across 38 years of life. But tonight, on this beach, beneath this grey October sky, he's something else. He's a man who's bet everything on a single throw of the dice. The wind pulls at his cloak. His banners, the golden lions of Normandy, snap and twist in the darkness. Around him, his knights huddle in their armour, breath misting in the cold. Some sharpen their swords. Others stare into fires, seeing things you can't see. Prayers drift through the camp like smoke. History for a moment holds its breath. But before we get to Hastings, before the shield walls and the arrows and the moment that changed England forever, we need to go back, way back. Because William the Conqueror didn't start as a conqueror at all. He started as a bastard in a castle in Normandy, born into a world that didn't want him, surrounded by people who would have been thrilled to see him dead. And, honestly, the fact that he survived childhood is almost as impressive as the fact that he conquered England. So get comfortable, fix that pillow, adjust your blanket, maybe grab some water, because we're going back to 1028, to a place called Falaise, where this whole impossible story begins. Part 1. The Bastard of Falaise. The castle at Falaise rises from the Norman countryside like a stone fist. It's autumn, 1028. The leaves are turning gold and rust, and if you stand on the castle walls, you can see for miles forests thick with oak and beech, fields striped with harvest stubble, the winding silver thread of the river Ante below. Inside the castle, in a chamber lit by oil lamps and a crackling fire, a woman named Herleva is giving birth. She's young, maybe 17, maybe younger, the daughter of a tanner from the town below, and the father of her child is Duke Robert I of Normandy, one of the most powerful men in France. This is not a marriage. This is not even an official liaison. This is, by the standards of the time, a scandal. But Robert doesn't seem to care. He's already produced no legitimate heirs, and he's decided that this child, legitimate or not, will be his successor. It's a gamble. A huge one. Because in 11th century Europe, illegitimacy isn't just a technicality. It's a stain. A permanent mark that follows you everywhere, whispered behind your back, used as a weapon by your enemies. And when the child is born, a boy, healthy, screaming, that stain is already there. They name him William. William the Bastard. Now here's the thing about growing up as a bastard in medieval Normandy. You learn very quickly that the world is not on your side. Robert does what he can. He recognizes William as his heir. He makes the Norman nobles swear oaths of loyalty to the boy. He surrounds him with guardians and protectors, men like William Fitzosborne and Roger de Beaumont, who will stay loyal to William for decades. But oaths, in 11th century Normandy, are about as reliable as the weather. and the weather in Normandy is terrible. When William is 7 years old, his father decides to go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem. It's 1035. Pilgrimages are popular among the wealthy and powerful, a way to show piety, to atone for sins, to gain favor with God. But they're also incredibly dangerous. The journey to Jerusalem takes months, across hostile territories, through disease-ridden cities, over mountains and deserts. Before Robert leaves, he does something unusual. He gathers the Norman nobility, the dukes, the counts, the bishops, and makes them swear again to accept William as duke if Robert doesn't return. Some of them swear willingly. Others swear because they have no choice. And then Robert leaves. He makes it to Jerusalem. He prays at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He fulfills his vow. And on the way home, in the summer of 1035, he dies. Some say it was illness. Some say poison. Nobody really knows. What matters is this: Duke Robert of Normandy is dead, and his heir is a 7-year-old bastard with a target on his back. The next few years are, frankly, a nightmare. You have to understand, Normandy in the 1030s and 1040s is not a stable place. It's a patchwork of rival lords, ambitious bishops, and old Viking families who haven't quite forgotten that they used to raid this coast for a living. The Duke is supposed to hold it all together through a mix of force, diplomacy, and sheer willpower. But William is 7. He can't lead armies. He can't negotiate treaties. He can't even protect himself. What he has are his guardians, men who stayed loyal to Robert, and, by extension, to William. Men like Count Alan of Brittany, who becomes William's protector. Men like Osborne the steward, who runs the ducal household. And one by one, they die. Not of old age, not of illness. They're murdered. Osborne is killed in William's own chamber, stabbed to death, while the boy sleeps a few feet away. William wakes to the sound of violence, to blood on the floor, to the realization that the people who want him dead are willing to come right into his bedroom to make it happen. Count Alan dies under suspicious circumstances. William's tutor, Thorold, is murdered on the road. It's not a conspiracy in the modern sense. No single mastermind pulling the strings. It's worse. It's chaos. A dozen different factions, each with their own grievances, their own ambitions, each seeing an opportunity to grab power while the duchy is weak. And in the middle of it all is William, a boy growing up in a world where trust is a liability, where every meal might be poisoned, where every smile might hide a knife. He learns to sleep lightly, to watch faces, to listen to what people don't say. He learns that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage. And he learns very early that if he wants to survive, he's going to have to be smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than everyone around him. By the time he's a teenager, the chaos in Normandy has reached a breaking point. The Western barons, powerful families who've never really accepted William's authority, are in open revolt. They've got their own candidate for duke, a cousin of William's named Guy of Burgundy. They've got castles, armies, and the backing of several neighboring lords. William, at 15 or 16 years old, has to put them down. This is not a game. This is not practice. This is survival. And here's where you start to see the man William will become. Part 2. The Young Duke. The year is 1047. William is 19 years old. Tall for his time, broad-shouldered, with a kind of presence that makes people pay attention even when he's not speaking. He spent the last decade learning to fight, to ride, to command. He's watched men die for him, and because of him. He's learned that mercy, while noble, is often mistaken for weakness. And right now, he's about to fight the battle that will define his rule. The western barons have gathered their forces at Valais Dune, a stretch of open ground southeast of Caen. It's a calculated insult. They're not even trying to hide. They want William to come to them. So he does, but he doesn't come alone. William has done something clever. He's gone to King Henry I of France, technically his overlord, the man to whom Normandy owes allegiance, and asked for help. Henry, who has his own reasons for wanting a stable Normandy, agrees. He brings an army. It's a risky move. Asking for outside help can make you look weak. It can create obligations you'll regret later. But William is pragmatic. He'd rather win with help than lose with pride. The Battle of Valais Dunes is not a long, drawn-out affair. It's brutal and decisive. The rebel forces, caught between William's men and the French army, break. Some flee. Some surrender. Some die in the mud, trampled by horses, cut down as they run. William does not show mercy. The leaders of the rebellion are hunted down. Their lands are seized. Their castles are torn apart, stone by stone, until nothing remains but rubble and memory. It's a message, a very clear message. Defy William, and this is what happens. From that point on, Normandy begins to change. William doesn't just want to rule Normandy, he wants to transform it, to take this chaotic patchwork of rival lords and forge it into something unified, something disciplined, something that can compete with the great powers of Europe. He starts building castles, not wooden forts, but stone fortresses that can withstand sieges. He places them strategically, along borders, near rivers, at crossroads, creating a network of strongholds that project ducal power into every corner of Normandy. He reforms the church. He brings in talented bishops and abbots, men who are both pious and administratively competent. He funds monasteries, sponsors religious reforms, and makes sure that the church, in return, supports his rule. He builds an army, not a rabble of feudal levies who show up when they feel like it, but a professional force of knights and soldiers who are loyal to him personally. He trains them, equips them, leads them, and he marries. In 1051, William marries Matilda of Flanders. It's a controversial match. Matilda is the daughter of Count Baldwin Fife of Flanders, a powerful and wealthy neighbor. But there's a problem. They're distant cousins, related within the degrees of kinship that the church considers too close for marriage. Pope refuses to give his blessing. William marries her anyway. It takes years of negotiation, diplomacy, and probably some well-placed bribes before the church finally agrees to recognize the marriage. In exchange, William and Matilda fund 2 new abbeys in Caen, one for men, one for women, magnificent structures that still stand today. It's a pattern you'll see over and over with William. He pushes boundaries, bends rules, does what he thinks is necessary. And then later, he smooths things over. He's not reckless. He's calculated. And his marriage to Matilda turns out to be one of the best decisions he ever makes. She's intelligent, capable, and fiercely loyal. She'll run Normandy while he's in England. She'll bear him at least 9 children, 4 sons and 5 daughters, most of whom survive to adulthood, which is almost miraculous by medieval standards. And by all accounts, despite the political nature of the match, they genuinely care for each other. But all of this, the castles, the army, the marriage, the consolidation of power, it's all building towards something. Because across the English Channel, in the Kingdom of England, something is about to happen. Something that will change William's life forever. Part 3. The Promise. The year is 1051, or maybe 1052. The sources aren't entirely clear. What is clear is this. At some point in the early 1050s, William crosses the English Channel and visits the English court. England, at this time, is ruled by Edward the Confessor. Edward is an odd king, pious to the point of obsession, more interested in building churches than leading armies. Married but, according to most sources, celibate, which means no children, which means no clear heir. And this is a problem, because when Edward dies, there's going to be a succession crisis. Multiple claimants, all with varying degrees of legitimacy, all ready to fight for the crown. One of those claimants is William. His claim is not obvious. It's not strong, but it exists. Here's how it works. Edward the Confessor is William's first cousin once removed. Edward's mother, Emma of Normandy, is William's great-aunt. It's a distant connection, but in the tangled web of medieval kinship, it's enough to make a claim. More importantly, according to Norman sources, Edward promises William the throne. We don't know exactly what was said. We don't know the circumstances. But the Norman chronicles are clear. Edward, perhaps grateful for William's support, perhaps swayed by their family connection, tells William that he will be king. Now, does Edward have the authority to do this? Not really. The English throne doesn't pass automatically from father to son. It's chosen by the Witan, a council of nobles and bishops who technically have the final say. But promises matter, especially when you're willing to fight for them. William returns to Normandy with Edward's promise in his pocket, and he waits. The years pass. William continues to build his power. He fights wars with his neighbours, Anjou and Brittany, expanding Norman influence, testing his army, honing his skills as a commander. He survives assassination attempts. He crushes rebellions. And then, in 1064, something happens that changes everything. Harold Godwinson, the most powerful nobleman in England, washes up on the coast of Normandy. Harold Godwinson is, depending on who you ask, either the greatest English hero of the 11th century or the greatest English traitor. He's the Earl of Wessex, the wealthiest and most influential man in England after the king. He's Edward, the Confessor's brother-in-law. He's a skilled warrior, a capable administrator, and, by all accounts, charismatic and well-liked. He's also, in 1064, shipwrecked. The sources differ on why Harold was at sea. Some say he was fishing. Some say he was on a diplomatic mission. Some say he was blown off course. What matters is this. He ends up in the territory of Count Guy of Ponthieu, a minor Norman lord. Guy, seeing an opportunity, takes Harold prisoner. This is standard practice. Ransoming important captives is a lucrative business. But William hears about it, and William intervenes. He basically tells Guy, "Release Harold to me, or else." Guy wisely complies. Harold is brought to William's court, and what happens next is, depending on which sources you believe, either a generous display of hospitality or a masterclass in manipulation. William treats Harold like an honored guest. He takes him hunting. He invites him to feasts. He brings him on a military campaign against the Bretons, where Harold fights alongside Norman knights and apparently distinguishes himself. And then, at some point during this visit, Harold swears an oath. According to Norman sources, Harold swears to support William's claim to the English throne. According to some versions, he swears this oath over holy relics, bones of saints, hidden beneath a cloth, so that Harold doesn't realize the full weight of what he's doing until it's too late. According to English sources, this whole story is Norman propaganda. Harold was coerced, or the oath never happened, or it was made under duress and therefore invalid. We'll probably never know the truth. What we do know is this. In January 1066, Edward the Confessor dies, and Harold Godwinson, within hours, is crowned King of England. Part 4. The Storm Gathers. Picture this. You're William, Duke of Normandy. You've spent 15 years preparing for this moment. You've built an army. You've consolidated power. You've got a promise from Edward the Confessor and an oath from Harold Godwinson. And now Harold has broken that oath. He's taken the throne that was supposed to be yours. What do? You invade. But invading England in 1066 is not a simple matter. It's not like you can just load up some ships and sail across. The logistics alone are staggering. You need ships. Hundreds of them. Ships that can carry not just men, but horses, armor, supplies, siege equipment. Ships that can survive the crossing of one of the most dangerous stretches of water in Europe. You need an army. Not just Normans, but mercenaries from Brittany, Flanders, France, even Italy. Men who are willing to risk everything for the promise of land and plunder in England. You need money, mountains of it, to build the ships, to pay the soldiers, to feed and equip thousands of men for months. And you need legitimacy, because invading another Christian kingdom is not something you can just do. You need a justification, a moral argument, something that makes you the good guy. So William does something brilliant. He goes to the Pope. He sends envoys to Rome, to Pope Alexander II, with a carefully crafted message. Harold Godwinson is a usurper and an oath-breaker. He swore on holy relics to support William's claim, and then he seized the throne anyway. This is not just a political dispute. This is a moral outrage, a sin against God. And, perhaps not coincidentally, the English Church has been dragging its feet on various reforms that Rome once implemented. William, on the other hand, has been very supportive of church reform in Normandy. The Pope, after some deliberation, sends William a papal banner. It's a symbol, a statement, a declaration that William's invasion has the blessing of the Church. That this is not just a war of conquest, but a righteous crusade against a perjurer and a usurper. It's propaganda, but it works. Knights and soldiers from all over Europe flock to William's banner. The promise of land, the papal blessing, the chance to be part of something historic, it's irresistible. By the summer of 1066, William has assembled one of the largest invasion forces Europe has seen in centuries. Somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 men, 600 or 700 ships. Enough supplies to sustain an army for weeks, maybe months, and they're ready to sail. But here's the thing about the English Channel. It doesn't care about your plans. William's fleet is ready in August, but the winds are wrong. They blow from the north, making a crossing impossible. Day after day, week after week, the army sits at the mouth of the Dives River, waiting. It's a logistical nightmare. Thousands of men crowded into camps, eating through supplies, growing restless and bored. Horses need feeding. Ships need maintenance. Discipline starts to fray. And all the while, across the channel, Harold Godwinson is waiting with his army. Harold knows William is coming. He's assembled the English Fyrd, the militia of free men who owe military service to the king, and stationed them along the south coast. He's got his fleet patrolling the channel. He's ready, but Harold has a problem. He's got another enemy. In September 1066, Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, one of the most feared warriors in Europe, invades northern England with a huge Viking fleet. He's allied with Harold Godwinson's own brother, Tostig, who has a grudge against Harold and wants him off the throne. Harold has to make a choice: stay on the south coast and wait for William, or march north and deal with the Vikings. He chooses north. It's the right choice. The Vikings are here now, burning and pillaging. William is still stuck in Normandy, waiting for the wind. Harold marches north with his elite troops, The housecarls, professional soldiers armed with massive two-handed axes. He covers nearly 200 miles in 4 days, which is almost impossible. And on September 25th, at Stamford Bridge, he catches the Vikings by surprise and destroys them. Harald Hardrada is killed. Tostig is killed. The Viking army is shattered. It's one of the greatest military victories in English history. And 3 days later, the wind in the Channel changes. William's fleet sets sail on the night of September 27th, 1066. Imagine it. Hundreds of ships, their sails catching the wind, torches burning in the darkness. The creak of wood, the slap of waves, the prayers of men who know they might not see morning. William's ship, the Mora, a gift from his wife Matilda, is faster than the others. By dawn, it's out ahead of the fleet, alone on the grey expanse of the Channel. There's a moment of panic. Did the fleet get lost? Did they turn back? William orders the ship to stop. They drop anchor. They wait. And slowly, one by one, the sails appear on the horizon. The fleet is intact. On the morning of September 28th, 1066, William's army lands at Pevensey on the southern coast of England. There's no resistance. Harold is still in the north, celebrating his victory at Stamford Bridge. He doesn't even know William has landed yet. The Normans pour ashore. Horses are led off the ships, whinnying and stamping, glad to be on solid ground. Supplies are unloaded. Tents are pitched. And William, in a move that's become legendary, trips as he steps off the ship and falls flat on his face in the sand. An omen. A bad one. The men around him go silent. Falls are considered signs of disaster. This could shatter morale before the invasion even starts. But William, without missing a beat, grabs 2 fistfuls of sand and holds them up. "See," he shouts, "I have already seized England with both hands." It's quick thinking. It's theatrical. It works. The men cheer. The moment passes, and William, brushing sand off his armor, gets to work. Part 5. The Wait. For 2 weeks, William waits. He sets up a base at Hastings, a natural harbor with good defensive positions. He builds a wooden fortress, a modern Bailey castle, the kind Normans have been perfecting for decades. He sends raiding parties into the surrounding countryside, burning villages, seizing supplies, making it clear that he's here and he's not leaving. It's a calculated strategy. William knows he can't chase Harold around England. He doesn't know the terrain. He doesn't have the supplies for a long campaign. So he makes Harold come to him. And Harold, when he hears that William has landed, does exactly what William expects. He marches south. Fast, maybe too fast. Harold has just won a massive victory in the north. His men are exhausted. His forces are depleted. The smart move would be to wait, to gather reinforcements, to let William's army sit on the coast and slowly run out of food. But Harold doesn't wait. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's anger at seeing Norman raiders burn English villages. Maybe he's hoping to catch William by surprise, the way he caught the Vikings. On October 13th, 1066, Harold's army arrives on a ridge about 7 miles from Hastings. It's called Senlac Hill, a good defensive position. Steep slopes, difficult terrain for cavalry. Harold forms his men into a shield wall, the classic Anglo-Saxon formation. Housecarls in the front, heavily armored, carrying those huge 2-handed axes. Feared militia behind them. Banners flying, including Harold's personal standard, the fighting man. And they wait. The night is cold. Both armies can see each other's campfires in the darkness. Both sides know what tomorrow will bring. Which brings us back to where we started. You're standing on the beach at Pevensey. October 13th, 1066, the night before the battle. William is with his men, moving through the camp, talking to his knights, checking weapons, offering reassurances. He's wearing chainmail under his cloak, the weight of it familiar after a lifetime of war. You can see it in the faces around you. Fear, determination, doubt. Some of these men have followed William for years. Others joined weeks ago, lured by promises of land. All of them know that tomorrow everything changes. Either William becomes king, or he dies on an English hillside and his name is forgotten. There's no middle ground. The wind off the channel is cold. The stars are bright and indifferent. Somewhere in the camp, a priest is leading prayers. Somewhere else, men are sharpening swords, the rasp of metal on stone cutting through the night. And William, Duke of Normandy, the boy who survived assassins and rebellions and a childhood that should have killed him, prepares for the battle that will define his life. But that battle, and what comes after, that's where we're going next. So stay with me. Get comfortable. Maybe adjust your pillow again, because the Battle of Hastings is about to begin. Part 6. The Clash. Morning comes slowly. The dawn on October 14th, 1066, is grey and cold. Mist clings to the ground, thick enough that you can barely see 100 yards ahead. The air smells of wet earth and wood smoke, and faintly, the sea. William's army forms up just after dawn. They're arranged in 3 divisions. On the left, the Bretons, tough, experienced fighters from the rocky coast of Brittany. On the right, a mix of French and Flemish knights. In the centre, the Normans themselves, William's core force, the men who followed him for years. Each division has the same basic structure. Infantry in front, archers behind them, cavalry in the rear. It's a combined arms approach, something William has perfected over years of campaigning. Infantry to absorb the first shock, archers to weaken the enemy from a distance, cavalry to break through once the line starts to crack. William rides along the line. He's wearing a hauberk, a long chainmail shirt that reaches to his knees. Over it, a surcoat marked with his personal emblem, a conical helmet with a nasal guard, a shield painted with the symbols of Normandy. He's 48 years old. For a medieval warrior, that's old. But he's still strong, still capable. And more than that, he's confident. You can see it in the way he sits his horse, the way he speaks to his men. This is not just about me, he tells them. This is about all of us. If we win, you'll have land, titles, wealth. You'll be lords in England, with estates and families, and a legacy that lasts forever. If we lose, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. If they lose, they die. Or worse, they survive, and spend the rest of their lives as landless mercenaries, wandering Europe, selling their swords to whoever will pay. This is it. This is everything. The army begins to move. Senlac Hill rises from the mist like the back of a great beast. It's not a mountain. It's barely even a hill. But it's steep enough, and the top is flat enough that Harold's shield wall stretches across the entire ridge, an unbroken line of men and metal and wood. You can see them now, as the mist lifts. Thousands of them, the housecarls in front, standing shoulder to shoulder, shields overlapping. Each shield is round, made of wood, covered in leather, painted with bright colors, red, blue, yellow. Each man carries a weapon. Most have those huge Danish axes, but some have swords, spears, clubs. Behind the housecarls, the feared, the militia, farmers and craftsmen and townsfolk who've been called up for this battle. They're less well armed, less well trained, but there are a lot of them, and they're defending their home. In the center, above the shield wall, Harold's banners fly, the fighting man and the dragon of Wessex. You can't see Harold himself from this distance, but you know he's there, somewhere, in that mass of men and steel. William's army reaches the base of the hill and stops. For a moment, there's silence. Just the wind and the creak of leather and the breathing of thousands of men. And then William gives the order. The archers step forward. They knock, arrows draw and loose. The sky darkens with shafts. The Battle of Hastings lasts all day. It starts around 9 in the morning and doesn't end until dusk. That's unusual. Most medieval battles are over in an hour or two, one side breaking and running. But this one drags on. The arrows rain down on the English shield wall. Some find gaps, and men cry out and fall. But most thud harmlessly into shields, into the ground. The angle is wrong. The English are uphill, and the arrows arc over them or fall short. After the archers, the infantry advances. It's slow going. The hill is steep, and the ground is soft from recent rain. The Norman foot soldiers, mostly armed with spears and shields, struggle up the slope, shields raised, trying to reach the English line. And when they get there, the shield wall holds. The housecarls are veterans. They've fought in Scandinavia, in Flanders, in Wales. They know their business. They lock their shields together and brace themselves, and when the Norman infantry crashes into them, they push back. It's brutal, methodical fighting. No room for fancy swordplay. Just push, stab, shove, hack. Men grunting with effort, shouting, dying on their feet, the ones behind dragging the bodies back and stepping into the gaps. The Norman infantry can't break through. After 20 minutes of this, they pull back. And then William sends in the cavalry. Cavalry charges are terrifying. Even if you've never seen one, you can imagine it. The ground shaking. The sound of hundreds of hooves, like thunder. Armored men on armored horses, lances leveled, coming at you at full gallop. It's designed to break morale, to make the enemy panic and run before the charge even hits. But the English don't run. The shield wall holds. The horses reach the English line and stop, because horses, even trained war horses, will not willingly run into a wall of spears and axes. They shy away, rear up, turn aside, and the housecarls step forward and start killing them. Those big Danish axes are perfect for this. One swing can take a horse's leg off. Another can split a knight's shield and the arm behind it. The cavalry charge breaks like a wave on rocks, and the riders pull back, frustrated, bleeding. William regroups, sends the cavalry in again. Same result. Hours pass. The sun climbs higher. The fighting continues, this back and forth, the Normans attacking, the English holding, neither side able to gain an advantage. And then something happens. On the Norman left flank, the Bretons break. Maybe it's frustration. Maybe it's fear. Maybe they're just exhausted. But they turn and run, streaming back down the hill in disorder. And the English, seeing this, make a mistake. Part of the shield wall, the militia on the English right, breaks formation and charges after the fleeing Bretons. It's instinct. It's the thrill of seeing your enemy run. But it's also exactly what you're not supposed to do in a shield wall. Because once you break formation, you're vulnerable. William sees it happen, and he acts. He wheels his cavalry around and slams into the pursuing English militia, cuts them off from the rest of Harold's army, surrounds them. It's a massacre. The militia, caught in the open without the protection of the shield wall, are cut down. Hundreds of them. The Bretons, seeing this, rally and turn back. And William has a realization. The feigned retreat. It worked once. It could work again. This is where the battle turns. Over the next few hours, William orders his cavalry to make fake retreats. They charge the English line, engage for a few moments, then turn and run as if panicking. And each time, part of the English line breaks formation and chases them. And each time, the Normans turn and destroy them. It's a tactic that requires discipline and training. You have to make it look real. If the English suspect it's a trick, they won't follow. But William's cavalry are professionals. They've trained for years. They can do this. Slowly, methodically, the English shield wall is whittled down. But Harold's core troops, the housecarls, don't fall for it. They hold the ridge. As long as they're intact, as long as Harold is alive, the English have a chance. The afternoon wears on. Both sides are exhausted. The ground is churned mud, slick with blood. Bodies lie everywhere. English, Norman, Breton, French. Wounded men crawl toward the rear, or just lie where they fell, too tired to move. And then, late in the day, an arrow flies up from the Norman lines. It arcs high, almost lazy, silhouetted against the grey sky, and it comes down in the centre of the English line, and it hits Harold Godwinson in the face. We don't know exactly how Harold died. The sources contradict each other. The Bayeux Tapestry, a massive embroidered chronicle of the invasion, made a few years later, shows a figure labelled Harold with an arrow in his eye. But it also shows another figure, unlabelled, being cut down by a mounted knight. Maybe Harold was hit by an arrow and then finished off by Norman knights. Maybe the arrow missed and he was killed in hand-to-hand combat. Maybe the tapestry is wrong altogether. What matters is this. At some point, late in the afternoon, Harold dies, and the English shield wall, which has held for hours, for the entire day, begins to crumble. Because medieval armies don't have radios. They don't have bugles or battle plans written down. They fight based on what they can see, what they can hear, what the men around them are doing. They follow banners. They follow leaders. And when Harold's banner, the fighting man, comes down, when word spreads that the king is dead, the English line doesn't just break. It dissolves. The third, the militia, they run first. Most of them have been fighting for hours. They're exhausted, terrified, and now their king is dead. They drop their weapons and flee into the gathering dusk, scattering into the woods and fields around Senlac Hill. The housecarls, Harold's personal guard, his elite troops, they stay. They form a circle around Harold's body. They lock shields one last time, and they fight. Not because they think they can win. No, not because they think reinforcements are coming. They fight because that's what they do. Because they swore oaths to Harold. Because running would mean dying tired instead of dying with purpose. William's cavalry surrounds them, charges again and again. The housecarls hold for maybe half an hour, maybe longer, axes swinging in the twilight, men falling, the circle growing smaller, and then they're gone. The last of them cut down as the sun sets on October 14th, 1066. The Battle of Hastings is over. The night after the battle is quiet. No cheering. No celebrations. Even the victors are too exhausted, too shocked by what they've been through. William walks the battlefield. It's something he does after every fight, a ritual, a way of processing what's happened. The moon is up now, bright enough to see by. The field is covered with bodies. English and Norman alike, lying where they fell, their faces pale in the moonlight. Priests move among them, offering last rites to the dying, closing the eyes of the dead. William finds Harold's body, or what he thinks is Harold's body. The face is too damaged to be sure, but the armor is rich enough, the position on the field right enough. They identify him by marks on his body, things only his wife or his brothers would know. William orders him buried with honor. Some sources say Harold is buried at Waltham Abbey, a church he founded. Others say he's buried on the beach at Hastings, overlooking the channel he failed to defend. The truth, like so much from this time, is lost. What's not lost is what happens next. Because winning a battle is not the same as winning a kingdom. Harold is dead. His army is destroyed. But England hasn't surrendered. London hasn't opened its gates. The English nobility hasn't bent the knee. William has won the day, but he hasn't won England. Not yet. Part 7. The Conqueror. The weeks after Hastings are a waiting game. William stays near the coast at first, consolidating his position, treating his wounded, gathering supplies. He's won a major victory, but his position is still precarious. He's deep in hostile territory with an army that's taken heavy casualties. One major setback and this whole invasion could fall apart. He sends messengers to London. The message is simple. I've defeated your king. I have the papal banner. Submit now, and there will be peace. Resist, and there will be consequences. London's response is to elect a new king. Edgar the Atheling. He's maybe 14 years old, the grandson of an earlier English king, with a better bloodline claim than Harold ever had. The Archbishop of York and the Earl of Mercia support him. On paper, England has a new king. In practice, Edgar's support is shallow. The English nobility is divided. Some want to keep fighting. Others want to negotiate. No one is quite sure what to do. William, sensing hesitation, begins to move. He doesn't march directly on London. That would be predictable. Instead, he swings wide, circling around the city, burning and raiding as he goes. Romney, Dover, Canterbury. Each town either surrenders or is taken and sacked. Dover is particularly important. It's the gateway to England, the closest port to Normandy. William fortifies it, builds a castle, secures his supply line, and then he crosses the Thames at Wallingford and starts to close in on London from the west. It's a brilliant strategy. He's not just conquering territory. He's isolating London, cutting off its supplies, demonstrating that resistance is futile. Every day that passes, more English nobles start to wonder if maybe submission isn't such a bad idea after all. In late November, a delegation comes out from London. Edgar the Atheling is with them. So is the Archbishop of Canterbury. So are several powerful earls. They kneel before William. They offer him the crown. The coronation takes place on Christmas Day, 1066. Westminster Abbey. A massive stone church barely finished. Edward the Confessor had died just days after its consecration earlier that year. The interior is cold, dim, lit by candles that flicker in the draughts. The ceremony is in Latin. Most of the English nobles don't understand it. Most of the Norman nobles don't care. What matters is the symbolism, the ritual, the weight of history. William is dressed in royal robes. He's holding the symbols of kingship, orb and scepter, regalia that once belonged to Anglo-Saxon kings. He's surrounded by bishops, by Norman barons, by English nobles, who've decided that survival is more important than pride. The Archbishop of York performs the ceremony. He asks the question in English and in French. Do you accept William as your king? The Normans inside the abbey shout, yes, in French. The English shout, yes, in their own language. And outside the abbey, Norman guards hear the shouting. They don't speak English. They don't know what's being said. All they hear is a roar from inside the church, loud and sudden, and they panic. They think it's a riot and an attack. They think the English are trying to kill William. So they do what soldiers do when they panic. They start setting fires. Within minutes, the buildings around Westminster Abbey are burning. The ceremony inside falters. Smoke starts to seep through the doors. People are screaming outside. Some of the congregation, both Norman and English, flee, terrified. William stays. He insists the ceremony continue, even as the smell of smoke fills the abbey, even as the shouts and chaos outside grow louder. He stands there in the flickering candlelight, and he's crowned king. William the First, King of England. But he's crowned in a church filling with smoke, surrounded by terrified nobles, while outside his own soldiers accidentally burn part of London. It's not exactly the triumphant moment he probably imagined, and in a way it's fitting, because William's reign is going to be defined by this tension, the gap between legitimacy and force, between being a king and being a conqueror. Part 8. Fire and Iron. Here's the thing about conquering England in 1066. You don't conquer it once. You conquer it over and over again, for years. William spends the first few months of 1067 trying to secure his position. He redistributes land. English estates go to Norman lords who fought with him at Hastings. He builds castles, dozens of them, wooden motte and bailey fortifications that can be thrown up in a matter of weeks. He places loyal Normans in key positions, sheriffs, bishops, castellans, and then, in March 1067, he does something unexpected. He goes back to Normandy. It's a calculated risk. England isn't secure yet. There are still English nobles who haven't submitted, regions that haven't been conquered. But William has been away from Normandy for 6 months. He needs to show his face to reassure his Norman subjects that he hasn't abandoned them, to parade his victory and distribute rewards. He takes hostages with him, Edgar the Etheling and several other English nobles. A guarantee of good behavior, and he leaves England in the hands of his half-brother, Odo of Bayeux, and his closest friend, William Fitzosborne. It's a mistake. Not bringing the hostages, that's smart. Not going back to Normandy, he needs to do that. The mistake is underestimating how much England still hates him. Because while William is in Normandy, receiving cheers and building monuments and basking in his victory, England explodes. The first rebellion starts in Kent in 1067. Then another in the west. Then the north rises. Then Wales gets involved. Then Scotland. By 1068, there are revolts happening all over England, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes in waves. The English nobility, the ones who submitted after Hastings, they haven't actually accepted Norman rule. They've been biding their time, waiting for an opportunity. Well, and now with William across the channel, they see their chance. William comes back, puts down the revolts, but it's like trying to stamp out sparks in a dry forest. As soon as you deal with one, another flares up somewhere else. In 1069, the north rises again. This time it's serious. The Earls of Mercia and Northumbria join forces. They attack York, which William has fortified with a castle and a Norman garrison. Hothelf. They overwhelm it. They kill the garrison to the last man. They burn the castle to the ground, and then they invite the Danes to join them. King Sweyn of Denmark, seeing an opportunity to reclaim some of the territory his ancestors once held, sends a fleet, a huge one, over 200 ships, carrying thousands of warriors. They sail up the Humber River and link up with the English rebels. For a moment, it looks like William might lose everything. He's in the south when he hears the news. York has fallen. The Danes have landed. The North is in open revolt. His advisors urge caution. Wait for reinforcements. Consolidate. Don't march into a trap. William marches north. It's winter. Late 1069, early 1070. The worst time to campaign. The roads are mud. The rivers are swollen. Supply lines are stretched to breaking. But William doesn't care. He moves fast. Divides his forces, takes multiple routes so the rebels can't predict his movements. And when he reaches the north, he doesn't just fight a battle. He destroys it. They call it the harrying of the north. It's not a battle. It's not a siege. It's systematic devastation. William's army spreads across Yorkshire, Northumbria, Durham, Ponty. They burn villages. They slaughter livestock. They destroy mills and granaries and seed stores. They kill anyone who resists and drive the rest into the winter. And now, it's not about territory. It's about a message. This is what happens when you rebel against William. The devastation is so complete that decades later, when the Domesday Book surveys England, large parts of the north are still listed as waste, empty, depopulated, economically destroyed. Historians estimate that tens of thousands of people died, maybe more. Not from fighting, but from starvation, from exposure, from the collapse of the entire social and economic structure that kept them alive. It's the darkest chapter of William's reign, point where conquest becomes atrocity, where pragmatism shades into cruelty. And it works. The northern rebellions collapse. The Danes, seeing that the English cause is hopeless, negotiate a payoff and sail home. By the spring of 1070, the north is pacified. Not because people accept William, because they're too broken to resist. The rebellions continue sporadically for years. But they're smaller now, more localized, easier to suppress. In 1070, Hereward, the Wake leads a revolt in the fens of East Anglia. It's a guerrilla campaign, hit-and-run attacks from the marshlands. William builds a causeway across the marshes, a massive engineering project, and crushes the rebellion. In 1075, 3 earls, 2 Norman and 1 Breton, rebel against William. They think he's given them too little power, too little land. The rebellion is put down before it even really starts. William has learned from the English rebels. He doesn't wait for threats to metastasize. He acts fast, decisively, overwhelmingly. By the mid-1070s, England is finally conquered. Not because the English love William, not because they've accepted Norman rule as legitimate, but because resistance has been beaten out of them. Because the alternative to submission is death or exile or poverty. It's a peace built on fear. But it's peace nonetheless. Part 9. The Book. In 1085, William orders a survey, the most comprehensive survey of land and property ever attempted in medieval Europe. It's going to record every manor, every village, every mill and plough and ox in England. Who owns what? How much it's worth? What taxes it owes? Takes a year. Commissioners travel across the country, holding hearings, taking testimony, recording everything in painstaking detail. The English call it the Domesday Book, as in doomsday, as in the Last Judgment. Because, like God's judgment at the end of the world, its verdict is final and cannot be appealed. It's a bureaucratic masterpiece. It allows William to know exactly how much revenue England can generate, exactly how much military service he can demand, exactly who owes what to whom. But it's also a monument to conquest, because what the Domesday Book really records is the transfer of England from English hands to Norman ones. Almost every entry lists two values: what the land was worth in the time of King Edward before the conquest, and what it's worth now. And almost every entry lists a new owner, a Norman name where an English name used to be. By 1086, almost all of England's land is in Norman hands. The English aristocracy has been replaced. The great earls, the thegns, the landowners who shaped English politics for centuries, they're gone, dead, exiled, or reduced to minor holdings. In their place, Norman barons, French knights, Breton lords, men who owe everything to William. It's the most complete transformation of a ruling class in European history, and it happens in just 20 years. But here's what's interesting. William doesn't try to erase England. He could have. He has the power. He could impose Norman law, Norman language, Norman customs across the entire country. He could tear down English institutions and replace them with French ones. He doesn't. Instead, he blends them. He keeps English administrative structures, the shires, the hundreds, the local courts, but places Normans in charge of them. He keeps English law, but adapts it to serve Norman interests. He keeps the English church hierarchy, but replaces English bishops with Norman ones who answer to Rome. It's pragmatic. England is too big, too complex to govern as a foreign occupation. William needs the existing systems to keep working. He just needs to control who runs them. The result is a hybrid. Norman on top, English underneath. French spoken in the castles and courts. English spoken in the fields and villages. And over time, slowly, over generations, they start to merge. Norman lords marry English heiresses. It's the easiest way to secure land claims. English merchants do business with Norman barons. French words slip into English. English customs influence Norman ones. By the time William dies, England is no longer quite English and no longer quite Norman. It's something new. Something that's going to evolve over centuries into what we now think of as England. But William doesn't live to see that. Part 10. The End. William spends his last years fighting. Not in England. England is, mostly, at peace. The rebellions have been crushed. The castles have been built. The administrative systems are in place. His sons, Robert, William, and Henry, are adults now, ready to take over. No, William spends his last years fighting in France. Border disputes with the King of France. Conflicts with his neighbours in Anjou, in Maine, in the Vexin. Old grudges and new insults and the endless grinding politics of medieval Europe. In July 1087, William is campaigning in the Vexin. He's 60 years old, heavy-set now. The lean warrior of his youth has become thick around the middle. But he's still fighting, still leading armies, still unwilling to let anyone else handle his wars. He's riding through the town of Montes, which his forces have just captured. The town is burning. Buildings collapse, smoke rises, the heat is intense, and William's horse stumbles. Maybe it steps on something. Maybe it's spooked by the fire. But it lurches forward, and William, in his heavy armor, is thrown against the pommel of his saddle. It doesn't seem like much. A bruise. A moment of pain. But something inside tears. Internal injuries. Bleeding that doesn't stop. William is carried to Rouen. He lingers for 6 weeks, getting weaker, in increasing pain. The physicians can't help him. There's nothing they can do. In September, he knows he's dying. He summons his sons. He divides his domains. Robert, the eldest, gets Normandy. William Rufus, the second son, gets England. Henry, the youngest, gets money. It's not a neat division. It's going to cause decades of conflict between his sons. But William is thinking in terms of feudal obligation. Normandy is his birthright, so it goes to his heir. England is his conquest, so he can give it to whoever he wants. On September 9th, 1087, William the Conqueror dies. His death is not dignified. The monks who are supposed to tend to him flee when fighting breaks out in Rouen, one of those petty feuds that were always erupting in medieval cities. William's body is left alone for hours. When they finally come back, they try to move him to Caen, to the abbey he founded years ago, where he wanted to be buried. But the body has been lying in the summer heat. It's bloated. It's starting to decay. They try to fit him into the stone sarcophagus they've prepared. He doesn't fit. They push harder, and the body ruptures. The smell is so bad that the monks performing the funeral have to run outside to vomit. The ceremony is rushed through, barely finished, everyone desperate to get out of the church. It's undignified. It's grotesque. It's almost farcical. And maybe there's something fitting about that, because for all his accomplishments, for all his power, William was still a man, still flesh and blood, still subject to the same indignities, the same decay, the same mortality as anyone else. The man who conquered England, who survived decades of war and conspiracy and assassination attempts, who transformed 2 kingdoms and changed the course of history. In the end, he dies badly and is buried badly, and his body literally falls apart. But his legacy doesn't. Epilog. The world William made. Let's talk about what William left behind, because his death isn't the end of the story. It's barely even the middle. The England that William conquered in 1066 is, by 1087, fundamentally different. The language is different. French words flooding into English, changing how people speak, what concepts they can express. The law is different. Norman feudalism replacing Anglo-Saxon customs. The architecture is different. Stone castles rising where wooden halls once stood. The church is different. More connected to Rome, less independent, more reformed. The cities are different. London growing, trade expanding, connections to continental Europe deepening. And the ruling class, as we've discussed, is entirely different. Norman names where English names used to be. But here's what's strange. Despite all that change, England doesn't become Normandy. It becomes itself. A hybrid. Norman and English, and something neither and something both. The Norman barons who settle in England, within a generation or two, start thinking of themselves as English. Their sons are born on English soil. Their daughters marry into English families. They eat English food, hunt in English forests, deal with English weather. And meanwhile, Normandy itself starts to drift away. William's sons fight over it. It's eventually absorbed into France. The connection between England and Normandy weakens and finally breaks. But the changes William made in England, those stick. Castles remain. The feudal system remains. The legal structures remain. The blending of Norman and English culture continues deepening until you can't really separate them anymore. The English language becomes this incredible flexible thing. Germanic in structure, but with a huge French vocabulary, able to express nuance and subtlety in ways that neither language alone could. English common law, a blend of Anglo-Saxon tradition and Norman feudalism, becomes the basis for legal systems across the world, including, eventually, the United States. And the idea of England itself, a unified kingdom, centrally administered with a strong monarchy balanced by powerful nobles, that's William's legacy too. He didn't mean to create all this. He was just trying to survive, trying to claim what he thought was his. trying to build something that would outlast him. And it did. God, it really did. Think about it like this. When William was born in 1028, he was William the Bastard. Illegitimate. Unwanted. With a target on his back, and a life expectancy measured in years, not decades. He survived childhood through luck, and the loyalty of a few good men. He survived adolescence through ruthlessness and intelligence. He claimed the English throne through preparation, strategy, and an almost unbelievable willingness to risk everything on a single invasion. And he held that throne through 20 years of constant war, constant political maneuvering, constant adaptation. He was not a nice man. Let's be clear about that. The harrying of the North was an atrocity. His treatment of the English nobility was brutal. He ruled through fear as much as through law. But he was effective. He was brilliant. And he was unshakable. Time and again, he faced situations that should have destroyed him. The chaos of his childhood. The rebellions in Normandy. The refusal of the Pope to bless his marriage. Harold's army at Hastings. The northern revolts. The Danish invasion. Any one of those things could have ended him. None of them did. Because William had something that's rare in any era. An absolute refusal to accept defeat. A will that bent the world around it. A vision so clear and so strong that it pulled reality into alignment with it, bit by bit, year by year, until the impossible became inevitable. They called him the Bastard for most of his life. But history remembers him as the Conqueror. And nearly 1,000 years later, the world he built, the language, the law, the very concept of England, it's still here. Still shaping our lives in ways we don't even notice. You're lying in bed right now, listening to this. Maybe it's dark outside. Maybe you can hear wind, or rain, or the distant sound of traffic. You're separated from William by almost a millennium, by technology he couldn't imagine, by social changes that would seem like magic to him, by a world so different from his that you might as well be a different species. But you speak a language that he helped shape. You live under legal concepts that trace back to his reign. You exist in a world where England, the England he created, was powerful enough to build an empire, to spread its language and culture and systems across the globe. The world William made is, in a very real sense, the world you inherited. Not directly, not in a straight line, but the echoes are there if you listen for them. In the words you speak, in the stories you tell, in the very idea that a single person, through will and vision and relentless determination, can change the course of history. William wasn't a hero. He wasn't a villain. He was a man. Ambitious, flawed, brilliant, brutal, human. But he was a man who refused to accept the limits that others placed on him. Who looked at the word bastard and decided it wouldn't define him. Who looked at the English Channel and decided it wouldn't stop him. Who looked at a kingdom and decided it would be his. And he was right. The night is quiet now. The candles in William's camp at Hastings have long since guttered out. The armies have fought and bled and won and lost. The castles have been built and crumbled and rebuilt. The names have been recorded in the Domesday Book, then forgotten, then remembered by historians, then forgotten again. But the story remains. The story of a boy born into chaos, who became a duke and then a king. The story of an invasion that changed England forever. The story of William the Conqueror. And now, nearly 1,000 years later, as you lie here in the dark, that story is yours too. Part of the long chain of human stories that connect us to the past, that remind us what people are capable of, for good and ill, for glory and atrocity, for creation and destruction. The winds of Normandy still whisper his name. The beaches of Pevensey remember his ships. The hills of Hastings hold the ghosts of that October day. And somewhere in the language you speak and the world you inhabit, William the Bastard, William the Conqueror, still echoes. Sleep well, traveller. The story is done.